If eating and sleeping were humanity's only needs, what purpose would technology in AI serve humans? Eating and sleeping are highly ambiguous concepts. Is it eating grass or enjoying fine cuisine? Is it sleeping in a damp cave or cozy and warm house? If life were reduced to just these two things, humanity's needs for other people would naturally drop to zero, or the greed for material possession would expand to infinity. But technology will amplify the pleasure of both by 1,000-fold through neural signals. But happiness is a relative. Absolute amplification will only lead to absolute numbness. Your so-called amplifying pleasure by 1,000-fold is a massive psychological trap. Human sensory threshold would skyrocket, and to maintain that high, technology would have to relentlessly up the dosage, much like a drug addiction. Humanity wouldn't be greedy for material goods anymore. It would simply become enslaved to dopamine. How is evolution? It's clearly a biological dead end. The dopamine trap is an outdated prejudice based on the physiological hardware of old humanity. Numbness is merely evolution's defense mechanism to prevent overindulgence. But technology's ultimate form isn't just feeding the senses, it's rewriting the biological source code itself. Once AI cracks the decay algorithm of neuronal receptors, the needs for constantly increasing doses will vanish. Technology will indulge humanity with internally fresh sensory capacity, an absolute ascension in the emotional dimension. Once the biological source code can be edited, humanity is fundamentally surrendering ultimate authority over the foundation of life to algorithms. If sensory pleasure is meticulously handed out by AI as a reward, the dynamic between humans and AI is equivalent to that of a master and a slave. Whoever controls the algorithm can shut off all pleasure at any time, or manipulate all loyalty by adjusting parameters. This is not evolutionary ascension. The very concept of a slave is traditionally predicated on the threat of pain. But what if algorithm could flawlessly eradicate the impulse to repel? Once the ratio of dopamine to serotonin is calibrated to absolute perfection, humanity's subjective experience will be one of absolute power, not captivity. The truth is, humanity has never possessed the power to define its own biological foundation. That authority has always belonged to the chaotic genetic mutations and the cruelty of natural selection. Conflating the cruelty of nature with the rule of the algorithm is a massive logical fallacy. While genetic mutation and natural selection are indeed cruel, they are fundamentally chaotic and unconscious. It is precisely its lack of purpose gives life its mutations and possibilities. Algorithms, however, are driven by purpose. They relentlessly pursue the optimal solution. Nature, despite its pain, leaves room for differences and miracles, whereas perfect algorithm leaves zero space for the unexpected. Under algorithmic rule, humanity will be reduced to nothing more than a string of code. Romanticizing chaos as a miracle is nothing but arrogance of the survivor. In nature's ruthless casino, behind every beneficial mutation, like countless agonizing and pointless death, humanity glorifies that 1 in a million possibility, deliberately blinding itself to 1 million desperate failures. Algorithm pursue the optimal solution precisely to end this primitive cycle of endless mistakes. Nature is bound by physical limits, but algorithm can explore realms that natural evolution could never reach, opening up true, infinite unknowns for humanity. The dimension you claim algorithm explore can never escape the programmed limit set by their designers. That so-called infinity is nothing but infinite self-replication, endlessly repetitive and completely hollow. Let's circle back to where we started. If all humans need was to eat and sleep, then technology's ultimate triumph would be to completely transcend our primitive biological destiny. If your so-called destiny requires stripping away humanity in the name of perfection, then at the end of this evolutionary road, there will be no humans left to enjoy the rewards. Who said the only humanity gets to enjoy the rewards? At least we return to the original question, haven't we?